What do a speaking coach, a strategy consultant, and the founder of IFT have in common? Sounds like the start of a bad joke, right? But honestly, it's all about finding out what people really do in their jobs, their stories, the struggles, the coffee breaks, the real stuff you won't get in a job title.
Welcome to a space where we sit down with people from all kinds of careers, have a laugh, and dive into what makes their work meaningful. Whether you're looking to learn something new or just here for a good story, let us be your guide. I'm Jeff.
And I'm Charlie.
And let's get
Casually Pro.
Pro.
Today we have a really cool founder and entrepreneur, Cruz, the founder of IFT. Really interesting guy. Started in entertainment, became a producer, has done all sorts of things, and is recently building something incredible to help give artists more visibility. Jay, thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, guys. It's good to be here.
Absolutely. So, can you start by telling us kind of what you do and why it's so cool?
Sure. So we all know Netflix and Max and all the streaming platforms. I've been in the creative space specifically with actors, writers, directors, filmmakers, and theater producers. I've been in this community for over 20 years. The only thing that's sustainable in this space is the relationships, right? We have a community of artists, and one of the hardest things to do is asking artists to become an entrepreneur and a marketing genius overnight. But at the end of the day, these lunatics and pirates are investing tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars in their projects and their films and shows, and they don't have any ROI strategy. They don't think about return on investment. They only think about producing and creating their films and shows. If you think about this community, it's very much like the startup community, where that script is the startup idea, right? And they need funding and they need a team of people to bring it to life. Normally, their journey is they produce their film or show and they go on the film festival journey, and then it ends up on YouTube or a hard drive and it dies. And they don't see any money back. They see laurels, maybe if it's really good at a film festival or two. They get some accolades. They get to network with other producers at the festivals, and that's it. You call it a day. You go back home, and that's it. Some of these films and shows are really, really good. And so we created a platform, a streaming platform where we are a revenue share. So 50% of the earnings that we bring in every month is split with every single title on the platform. So normally a film or a show only gets paid if they've been viewed. We're paying out to films and shows whether they were viewed or not. So it really has some like a democratizing effect to the industry, where some of the best titles in this space are now seeing funding where normally they wouldn't see a dime back ever. And so that's very exciting. But IFT goes beyond that. We are a complete ecosystem, because we know that in this space, there's never only one script, right? So there's one script, they go, they make that, but there's probably five more on the computer that they're willing to make. And one of them is really good, and that's probably the next one that they're going to go do the exact same thing they just did with the first one. So it's, and I say this loosely, rinse and repeat, right? They're going to create their first film. They're going to learn all types of really cool stuff on how to make it. And now that second one is on the shelf. They're going to dust it off, get it right, and then go on that journey to make that film or show. And so there's a lot of that in the space. And there was not really one system, one brand, or one company that was really supporting the space. Most, if not all, of everyone else in this space is basically emulating Hollywood, emulating the streamers, really copycat stuff. And I get it. That's, standard operating procedure. That's where I kind of come in, and like in the first Apple commercial, I'm throwing the sledgehammer at the monitor and just, I can't wait to disrupt this whole entire industry. And what's exciting is in the next few months, we'll be going to film festivals outside of New York and LA, where there are huge communities of filmmakers and theater producers, because they wear all the hats. They wear all the hats, right? And so we'll be able to start seeing some traction in our subscription services, in our marketing agency, in our script development, and that's really exciting for us.
Wow, that's incredible. There's so many parts to kind of unpack, but I think the coolest part for me is that it is a streaming service that acts as an artist collective.
Correct.
So you are not only supporting individual companies or small time actors and producers, but you're also contributing to the overall ecosystem of independent art.
Correct. Every
Wow.
Tuesday, for example, every Tuesday night, 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific, my team, who's mostly based out in LA, I'm in New York, we get on a Zoom, and every Tuesday we're reading a different script from an independent writer. We read it out loud, normally, usually for the first time that that writer is listening to their words, to their script for the first time. And what's really cool, we have a bunch of volunteer actors that come in every week and read the parts. Then after, my team are script coaches. So Nate Raven and Sean Logan are my script coaches that are in that development space. It's a safe space for writers to come in, they hear the script, and then it becomes like a mini focus group where the writers, the readers, and my team give that writer feedback on where it's strong, where it needs some work, where it really needs some really strong development, what's holding tight. Really a good round feedback, and all for free. And then we give them the Zoom recording so that they can go back and look at it and read it and hear it again. And so we're empowering these writers. And one of the cool, I'll tell you about Steve. So Steve is the perfect example.
Mhm.
In May 2022, Steven came in with a short script, 25 pages of a script called Static Cling. It was a big script, had about a dozen players in it, a dozen actors. We read the script out loud, we give him notes. Steve went and rewrote the script. Now he has confidence because he knows exactly what he has in that script. There's no guessing. You know exactly now what you have, where you need to work on it. Now he's got confidence. Steve went out and raised some money, produced his short film. End of 2022, he was already on the film festival circuit. All of 2023 and 2024, he's been enjoying his film festival circuit, and soon that film will be streaming on IFT Network. So you see how it's full circle. From script
Mm.
production to distribution, IFT was able to support Steven on his journey. And as we start to tell those types of stories, that is exactly what our community is looking for. So we start to gain traction, and there's a lot like our writing room space. Those Tuesday nights are booked through May. So every
Wow.
Tuesday between now and May is taken. So if you had a script, you said, "Yeah, I want to read it on a Tuesday," I'll see you in June because that's yeah. So and it's free. It's a huge value add. My team is amazing. They've earned the trust of the community, so people know that they're really getting value in the space. And I like to tote this. Approximately 60 to 70% of the scripts that we read go on to get produced later. And that's incredible.
Wow.
So the producers are really gaining confidence in the work that they're doing in these scripts to go out and successfully raise and put together the funding they need to go create those films and shows. And that to me is the magic. And again, that's just one pillar of our multi-pillar business that is IFT Network.
Well, it seems that you're really doing this from passion and that you guys are doing a lot more than what would just be required to make the business run. I imagine that this industry is very tough to get in. And by the way, Jay, can you tell us a bit more about how you ended up in this industry?
Oh, I'd love that story. Sure. So I'm a graphic designer by trade. I'm a very good graphic designer. I'm an award-winning marketing professional. I grew up in newspapers. So I used to work for a newspaper called The Village Voice. They are no more. But it was a national free weekly newspaper. It was all ad revenue based. So the way the newspaper made their money was by selling lots and lots of advertising. From that weekly national, I moved to a daily free AM New York. If you've been to New York, you see they give it away in the train stations. I went to AM New York for a few years. And my first day at AM New York, I met a guy named Tony White. Shook his hand. And for the first 3 months at the job, we were arch enemies. It was horrible, 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 horrible. One of my roles was to prepare the layout for tomorrow's newspaper. And my deadline every day was 3 p.m. So by 3 p.m., I had to have the pages 24, 28 pages, and all the boxes where the ads would go later, and all the columns where the stories would be dropped in and edited. And then we take those pages once completed and checked off and send them off to the printer. That was a daily routine. 3 o'clock was the deadline. Every day at 3 o'clock, at 3:30, Tony would call with late additions to tomorrow's paper. So that means that all the work that we had just did, we had to chuck it in the garbage and start from scratch because he's now bringing in and having us, causing us to solve these problems because we're free. So we have to get as much money into every newspaper that we can, right? And so every day for 3 months, this guy's making me late on my deadline and changing my deadline and causing all this extra work, and it's driving me crazy. And we're arguing about it, and he's making all these excuses for 3 months. Finally, one day, I started in April, so one day in June, I'm on 34th Street between 8th and 9th. There's a movie theater there, and I'm having some fresh air outside. I'm on a break. And who would I see walking down the street? Tony White. And if you see Tony White was a heavyset African American man. He was wearing a black trench coat in the middle of like June. It's like hot outside. It's like one of those 90-degree June days. And I'm like, this guy's out of his mind. And then he's got paper all over and they're falling from the side. And it looks like what's a whirlwind of newspapers is around. I'm like, what is, it's just cinematic. And I say, Tony, where are you coming from? He goes, I'm coming from rehearsal. And I go, oh, he's an actor. And I realized I'm never going to win the fight with this guy because he's trying to live his dream and get that role in that movie or get that role in that TV show. And as long as he's having that drive and those opportunities, he's going to always be late. And so I understood that, and we became best friends ever since. And so Tony was the actor, the director, and the producer. He did a lot of off Broadway shows. And I started doing graphic design and marketing, and the rest is history. I became the guy who took care of everything off the stage, and Tony became the person that took care of everything on the stage. Um, Unfortunately, Tony passed away in January 2020. And then it was in October 2020 that I decided I'm going to get into streaming. I don't know how I'm going to do it. I don't know where to start. I have no idea what I'm doing, but I'm going to get into streaming because during COVID, I saw this community just kept making awesome stuff. And I was like, people need to see this stuff. And this would be a great way to kind of remember our friend who was a huge part of this independent community for over 20 years. I mean, there were actors who were ready to quit the business, and Tony would give them a small role in some small play, and they would get their fire back, and those people would go on SNL and Comedy Central. And so you can see how one person just giving you one small break at a place or a time where maybe you were down on your luck can change your whole trajectory for your entire career. And so that to me is the biggest takeaway for IFT. We want to be the bottom. We want to own the bottom of the pyramid, right? So what I mean by that is if independent film and theater was a pyramid, Hollywood, Broadway, Netflix, all the streamers, they're above the pyramid. Those are the stars, right? The universe. That's where everybody wants to be. They want to be stars. So we put them up there. At the top of the pyramid, you have production companies like A24, Neon, Tyler Perry, the guys that make stuff and get full theatrical distribution and make tons of money for almost every film they release. That's the top of the pyramid. From the top to the middle, you have all those big producers and the lawyers and all the big money. I want to own the middle to the bottom. There's so much new intellectual property in that space. There's so much great energy. And again, these folks are going to go make that film or show, whether they have it or not. They're going to find a way. So that passion, that drive, I want to capture that and be that conduit, that point of reference where they can come in and knock on our door and say, hey, I need help. Who can you help? How can you help me? And we can introduce you to other people. We can help you in getting the story developed better. We can help you in introducing you to maybe a film editor. Whatever it is that they need, we probably have a resource or two that we can point them to and then have them continue their journey forward and progress. And so that's a big part of our thing, is being that support system and being that launching pad for a community that, again, they're going to make stuff, and some of the stuff they make is excellent.
That's incredible. I have nothing but respect for people who stay in the arts. I think everyone has some portion of themselves that's creative, but it's such a difficult thing to make that your number one passion forever.
Tell me about
And yeah, absolutely. But it is critical, right? Because what they provide isn't tangible in the sense that, you know, uh, uh, laundromat businesses or, a banker can transfer funds, but it is just as important, just as essential for the human psyche to feel these ranges of emotions that you get from watching film and television,
It's
and especially
storytelling.
unique ones.
Yeah, it's storytelling. It really is all about storytelling is one of the oldest forms of communication, right?
Mm,
Before we had technology, our people would sit around the fire and just tell stories, right? And even if you think back before that, it was a custom for like the elder every night after dinner, after the evening food, the whole tribe would gather around the fire and listen to the elder tell them stories. Storytelling is one of the oldest forms of communication, is how we connect with each other. It's how we learn from each other. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways of what we're doing, is that we're providing a space where you can hear these stories you normally would not hear at all. And I think that's important because a lot of these stories that you hear, we can relate to, right? Life, although everyone's life is different, there are patterns and times that are very similar. And in hearing some of these stories, you can see how and why, and just kind of learn from and realize how much we are all alike in some way and how we can connect. And I think one of the biggest connectors is our stories.
mm. Yeah, absolutely. And it's also a really interesting point because the most successful people in non-conventional backgrounds coming to business are usually artists. And it's because they have, yeah, they have this really beautiful ability to romanticize the most difficult part of business, which is that grind, which is the I wake up, I eat, sleep, breathe, making this thing.
Yep.
And for them, it's ingrained in them because that's how they develop their art. But that's also how you make a really, really successful business. Uh,
It is the ground, the foundation you want to be on. Yeah. If you have a founder or a business person that's not 100% into it, that's a red flag for a lot of people,
mhm.
me included. Like, um, you can talk a good game all day long, but if you're not actually doing it, boots on the ground every single day, then yeah, you're probably not going to be, as serious as say someone who does do it every day. And again, there's all types of pros and cons to all of that, but it absolutely matters. It absolutely matters, and it's not easy. There's nothing cheap about art. I learned that my first week in college. I had a professor who was just like walking around the room on the first day, just looking at people and saying, "There's nothing cheap about art. There's nothing cheap about art." Said it in my head because it's true. Whether it be
Yeah.
graphic design, you need a computer. If you're in painting, you need paints and brushes and canvas. If you're in filmmaking, you need, equipment and bodies and like a small army to get it done. So you need locations, you need lighting, you need all types of stuff. So
Mhm.
one of the biggest things that kind of cuts us is the idea that everyone wants or expects the independent artist in film and theater specifically to kind of build an audience. And
Mm.
the journalists did it, right? The newspaper died. A lot of journalists went solo online and they were able to cultivate a community, an audience. Musicians, some of the top musicians we know today were found independently on YouTube and stuff like that, right? Because they were
Mhm.
able to do solo stuff from their bedroom or what have you and create an audience. It's a little bit different for the filmmaker and the theater producer, for the actors, for the writers, because in almost everything you do, you need other people.
Mhm.
And so the journey is a little bit more sluggish because a lot of the spaces that you can work on your own only but for so long before you realize, oh, I need some help, or I need to get, I need to get an editor out here. I need to get a cinematographer out here. I need to get actors involved so that it's not just me playing every role. Like there's all types of challenges in the space, but it's changing, right? The technology is changing. You have iPhone now that, I mean, the artist The Weeknd did his last music video all on iPhone. So the tools are out
Mhm.
there. It's becoming a little bit more, I don't want to say easier, but more straightforward to get things done in our space, which is great. There's new AI that's incredible, right? Video making AI. You can basically plug your story into it now, and it's going to produce what it thinks is your film or show. Like those are all brand new, just coming out, like fresh out of the
Mhm.
box. So this entire industry is about to change. That's from the bottom end. When you talk about the top end, Hollywood's not taking any risks, right? I mean, they're gonna remake American Psycho. Why? Why? Christian Bale was awesome in that. Don't touch that. But they're gonna go do it. Why? Because to them, it's a sure bet. I'd rather spend 50, 60 million on this that I know I'm gonna get at least that much back than take a risk on an unknown writer with a new IP that I don't know how the community or the public is gonna digest that or be attracted to that. So there's a lot of brokenness at the top, and it's crazy because the amount of money that they're putting into some of these projects is incredible, right? 200, $300 million is like, who can compete with that? So you got to find your own landscape, your own kind of garden to play and grow. And I think what we've done with IFT is build that like garden. We have people from all over the planet engage with us. I have Melbourne, New Zealand, all over Europe, South America, all over the States, Canada. Every week, people are participating from all these places. I got people in Melbourne and India who come on Tuesday night. It's Wednesday for them the next day. I got one guy who's in the Middle East, and his is it's like 3 in the morning for him, and he's up with us, listening to a script. He's not even reading or write or nothing. Like he's just involved because he wants to learn. So
Mhm.
that to me, those actions to me show me that what we've created has a lot of value, and it's just a matter of time before we really start to, like, we're making money every day, which is great. But now it's just a matter of time to, some water and sunshine, like they say, to really get this thing to where it should be.
Mm. That brings up a really interesting point because what most people don't know is that you and I are both really active in the innovation space. And what we find is that there are a lot of people that have this misconception on how funding works, how businesses should be run, how to start your own business in general. Uh, you know, I always preach forget about funding until you have a good business. And I know that you are a super dedicated researcher when it comes to getting to that point where you need the funding and then excelling in finding the right people to partner up with. So, could you tell us a little bit about your experience, maybe from that position? Like, how do you look at funders and contributors to your projects?
Well, that's like a twofold question. So there's the producers, they don't really provide funding, but there's a whole onboarding process for the new films and shows that we have and through the community. But through say like VC or angel investors, because that's the spectrum, right? You got VC, you got angels and everything in between, right? Family offices, all that. Um, I think a lot of what people expect is for them to find a person that they don't know that seems to be interested in something similar to what their product or service is that they're creating, and they expect this person to just go head over heels and want to connect with them. And that's just not the case, especially if you're more in the mainstream or even in fringe. So I consider what we're doing very fringe, right? It's an entertainment, it's creator economy, passion economy. There's so many other businesses in this space. It's incredible. Just streamers alone, there's over 2,000 other streaming platforms for indie. And that's kind of like insane, right? Like, how are these people even surviving? Well, because they have an old model where it's like, you pay me once for the film, you watch the film once, and that's it. Yeah, that doesn't work. So I can see why funders and VCs are very skeptical about this fringe space. And so what I've learned is research is everything, and building relationships and leveraging your network is the most important thing that people on the fundraising journey can do. And so that's to say, use AI to come up with really cool cold intros, but don't you dare send a cold intro without doing research on the person that you're reaching out to. Find out something that they like, find out if there's something you have in common, find out if there's geography. Maybe you can go have a coffee, keep it simple, light. Find out if there's someone that is connected to the both of you, or maybe a second person removed. Like, the expectations of a lot of the founders in our space are just, they're not reasonable. They're unreasonable in the expectations. And I want to really kind of like push back and say there's a ton of money out there. There's no question. It's just a matter of how we as individuals go about and engaging that funding and engaging that money in that source, right? And so, for example, today I had a lunch. It was a great lunch. The person I spoke to has been someone I met in July. We spoke about trying to get together and doing this lunch in December. And
Mm-hmm.
so patience is a big part of what you have to have, right? A lot of the times you get so hyped, and I'm guilty of this as well. You get so hyped, you're so passionate about your creation, your startup, that you think everybody I talk to should be as passionate about this as me. And it's just not the case. And you're like
Mm-hmm.
talking to people, and you're like, why are you not jumping head over heels? Did you not see what I made? It's awesome. Do you not realize how amazing this is? Do you not see how many people we're helping? What's wrong with you? Are you sick? Do you see what I'm saying? So that
Mm-hmm.
expectation of why are you not getting crazy like me? And so that's something where you kind of, again, patience is a big part of it. I think the relationships kind of show you where they're going to go, right? I think oftentimes that first person that you really want to connect to, the expectations is also something I think people should drop expectations entirely for all of life and not just fundraising. Like, don't have expectations. Just go talk to them and see what happens, right? They may not be the one that writes a check, but they may connect you to 20 people, and those 20 people are the ones that you want to talk to, and they might write a check. And so you end up
Mm-hmm.
winning bigger than you anticipated if you had thought, well, I'm going to talk to this one guy, and I know he writes $25,000 checks, so that's my goal. No, you should drop the expectation and just go create a relationship with that person and see what happens. And for example, in doing that today, I could have been, all right, this person has the MO of writing certain size checks and he likes certain types of founders. I threw that out. I said, let me go meet this person who I've been cultivating a relationship online for a few months now. And let's see what they have. Let's see what they're interested. Are they interested first? And they were. Second, what do they have to offer? How can they help us? And most important, how can you help them? Right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, you can't just be with your hand out. You got to be in an understanding that in your strategy in fundraising, it's a give and take, not just take.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And so
Absolutely.
in your strategy, when you're building relationships, you want to see and look for folks where you can offer value to. Right. And you say, hey, I just met a guy yesterday. You're into quantum sciences. I met a guy yesterday who's in quantum sciences. Let me connect you. Right. And so
Mm-hmm.
that's what I mean about really diving into the research and finding out not just what value that person has for you and what they can offer you. And even when you do, forget the expectation, right? And then figure out how can I make their life better, right? What can I do? Who can I connect them to? What value can I bring to the table so that we can continue engaging in this relationship, right? It's not just me with my hand out saying, hey, can you fund my business? Can I have 25,000, 50,000? That's I think there's a training of, I think that's why accelerators are great, although not a lot of accelerators get it right. But I
Mm-hmm.
think this is a behavior business, right? You're not going to get funding based on data. You're going to get funding based on emotion, right?
Mm-hmm.
That funder's got to get excited about it because the data can be there. It could be top notch. But if that person did not get excited about your idea, your startup, or the founder, they're not going to play with you. They're not going to want to dance with you, right? When you see it, when you're, I don't know how much you guys dance, but when you go to a dance, right? And you see someone you want to dance with. When you see that person you want to dance with, you get excited, right? You
Yeah.
say, hey, I'm going to go ask that person to dance. It's the same psychology, right? You got to make them
Mm-hmm.
excited and want to dance with you. And I think that's something that escapes a lot of the founders, especially minority and women founders, right? Because it's
Mm-hmm.
even tougher for us to raise. So
Oh yeah.
I think helping founders in the more diverse categories, I think is important, because that knowledge helps. I think that kind of breaks down some of the expectations and some of the barriers that we create. And it's frustrating, guys. It's frustrating. Walt Disney had over 400 rejections. Look at the company now. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So it's the thing where I think patience, thick skin, removing expectations, and finding out how you as a founder, you as an individual, you as the business person can add value to the people you're trying to connect to. I think that is a really good formula, not for success, but to increase the success rate, right?
Mm.
Because you can still go out after having learned all this and understanding all this, you can still knock on 100 doors and still get 100 rejections. But you're being patient, you're being resilient, you're still working on how I can build value, right? You're still figuring out what you can bring to the table. So there's a lot of that I think is escaping a lot of our founders. And I think a lot of great ideas die because the
Mm.
founders become so frustrated and so I just can't do this, or it's just not working, that sort of thing. So, and I learned this 2 years ago. Ask your friends. Ask your friends.
Yeah.
Talk to your friends. Go get them for a cup of coffee or buy them a burger. Talk to them about your idea. Talk to your friends, because they might not have a check to write, but they might know someone who does. They might know someone in the business and whatever business that you're in. So talk to your friends. You don't have to give them the whole scale and scope, but you can really, just in talking to your friends, like, do you know anybody who likes this kind of stuff? Do you know anybody who's into this kind of stuff? Like, can we maybe we can get to lunch with them, or maybe we can get a warm introduction via email. I think that a lot of people escape, um, not escape, but they fall so deep into their startups. As an entrepreneur, oftentimes it's a lonely journey. So you still have friends, but you may not hang out as much as you used to, maybe, or life happens and you're just so busy. I think getting back to that, I think keeping a consistent walk back to say, hey, let me go hang out. Let me take a break from this. And that break is either, going to go have a coffee with a friend, or just keeping those relationships, where you can have those ongoing conversations, and you plant the seeds, right? You say, hey, I'm looking for this, I'm looking for that. They may not have an answer today, but they have the knowledge today. And so tomorrow they may run into someone that can help you. And then that's how change happens, right? Hey, I have a friend. Let me introduce you. By next week, now you're talking to that person. And now the whole game is changing for that founder or startup. So I think um, a lot of that gets lost because founders get so into it and they get so buried into their vision, and then try to sustain and make it work. It's not easy. It's not, especially when there's no money coming in. It's a bigger challenge. So it could
Mm-hmm.
be frustrating. It could be debilitating, but I think there are strategies that can help. And it takes work. It takes work to research someone. I call it Morpheus mode. I go into Morpheus mode with certain people and just like find a way to say, okay, how can I connect to this person? Do they know anybody I know? They went skiing. I don't like skiing, so that's not synergy. But they like snow, so maybe I'll say something about snow, and that gets them a laugh. And now you're talking to the person on Zoom a week later. So whatever it is, there's no wrong answers unless you're being disrespectful. That's one thing. But
Mm.
doing a little bit of research can go a long way.
Wow, it seems that you just gave us a blueprint on how how you can find what you want to find by talking about it to everyone you know, asking if they might connect you to someone they know. And if you want to connect to someone you don't know, do extensive research. Try to see if there is anyone who you know and this other person know who can make the introduction, or try to connect on something common like a
Something
hobby,
personal.
a
Yes.
location,
Separate the business and connect personally. Yes.
and don't expect anything. Try to
Exactly.
give. And there is quote that I like and that I've put in front of my desk that says, doors of opportunities are open to those who continually knock.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
Looks
That is a
like the
great point.
blueprint. That looks like a blueprint for success. Don't be afraid for rejection.
Oh, it's part of it. It's absolutely part of it. You can't, it's not even about being afraid of it. You need to expect the rejection.
Mm,
It is something that I mean, it's gonna make the difference. I know a lot of people who were in the startup journey 3 years ago, they're not on the startup journey anymore.
hmm
As horrible as that sounds, as great as the ideas that they had, they're just not on the journey anymore. And I understand rejection is hard. I think about my landscape, right? I'm working with actors all the time. Think about the audition process for a part in a movie. That's a lot of rejection that this community deals with all the time. All the time. It's discouraging, right? And so that is really the difference between some of those that make it and some of those that don't. It's really like, how tough is your skin? How long can you sustain this? How long can you really, do you really believe in yourself enough to continue on that journey? And unfortunately, life happens and not everyone can continue on the journey. A lot of people maybe try to pick it up later, what have you, but it's not easy. There's nothing easy about this.
No, and you know, the thing that I constantly find is that success at anything really is just staving off attrition, right? Eventually, you will hit an opportunity that if you are prepared, if you are open, and if you're well liked, you can take really great advantage of that.
Right. And again, those three things you just described are emotional, right?
hmm
The person who's providing that has to feel you're ready, right? They have to feel it's all emotional. And I think that's why the connections are so important. I had an opportunity once. I sat down with a gentleman. They're never going to give you a check the first date. I think a lot of founders think if I meet this guy, I'm going to blow his mind and he's just going to open a checkbook. No.
If
A
they do, that's
smart
a red flag.
That's right. Right. A smart investor is not going to do that. A smart investor is never going to just say, "Hey, I'm going to wire you some money right now because you're so amazing." I mean, unless you're selling gold,
I,
gold
there's a lot of Nigerian princes out there that want to give you money, right?
like, it's not to say that it's impossible. It would be irresponsible for me to say that it's just impossible to get a check on the first date. Absolutely.
Mm.
You can. It has happened, right? There's also been startups. I remember 2 years ago, there was a startup, Chase Bank. Jamie Dimon and his people, they invested $148 million into this young woman's startup. It had to do with college tuition. It was a big scam. And I said to myself, how on earth, through all the due diligence that these folks are supposed to do, how on earth did they go ahead and fund this person $148 million when they really had no traction and no, I just, so that's the opposite spectrum, right? Where you have these unworthy startups and they're getting all this funding and you're like, how's that even possible? Because it's all emotional. That's all it is. It's all emotional. Even the stock market, right? People start to buy and sell based off what others are doing and the panic and all that. It's all emotional. When you understand that, you become a person, a founder that you want to make people feel good. You want to make people feel confident in you and what you're doing. And that's a learning process for a lot of founders, right? Not a lot of founders understand that. That's why one of the things that I gravitated towards Jeff, because I was like, he's working with tech folks and not and they're public speaking. I'm like, yeah, they need it. They need it. And that's a really empowering space to be. And I liked his story and the fact that he had issues with that and he's overcome that. And now he's teaching other folks how to do it. That to me is magic. You know what I mean? That's to me is exactly the type of folks I want to be around because empowering other people empowers you. And a lot of people don't see it that way, but it really, really does empower you. And I've just spent
100%.
the last 3.5 years with an amazing team empowering hundreds of independent writers that normally wouldn't see the help that we've given them. And that's to me is everything. And I feel great about
Right.
it.
As you should. You know, I constantly tell people that when you try to network, and I think network is a it's a really technical term for a really untechnical thing that you need to do and that you need to get good at. But when you network and you lead with generosity, there are only two things that can possibly happen. One is that you disarm this idea that you have to trade tit for tat because nobody really likes doing that. but they always like the guy that's willing to give, right? So that's one. And two, there's always an opportunity to receive. So
Yes.
either you get back what you were looking for, or the worst, very, very worst case scenario is you end up being the most well liked guy in the room. That's it.
I've been there too. I've been on both spectrums, right? I'm
Mhm.
not a sprint chicken anymore. I'm about to be 50 in June. So, I have a lot of experience. I've done all types of work. I had the corner office making lots of money overlooking Madison Square Garden. And I've also been the helper on a garbage truck on overnights. Like I've done it all, man, and I've seen it all. And I think you have to respect the game, all of it.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? I think like that garbage truck job is one of the hardest jobs I've ever seen. When you see those guys at night, like respect those people. That's a hard job. It's dangerous. I've seen people
Mhm.
get hurt in ways that I just couldn't imagine on those things, doing that work. So you take a lot of that for granted, that sort of thing. I think, again, it has to do with expectations. I think a lot of us we grew up with having expectations of certain things, and I think the more we realize that having expectations is really a deterrent and not something that helps you advance, I think the faster that that individual learns that, I think you talked about being open. Can I get more open than not having expectations? It's just being really present and saying what is happening right now. What are we talking about? How can I contribute to your point, right? How can I give? And then be grateful for that. And I think gratitude is a big part of it too, right? Today I had a lunch, homeboy paid for it. Thank you. Like that's awesome. You know what I'm saying? So it's all these little things, they accumulate. They absolutely accumulate. And so community is also like, how do you thrive in a community if you're not generous, if you're not open? You have to kind of be consistent with it, right? Otherwise, they're gonna know, like, yeah, this person is not somebody I can approach. This person is not somebody I can do business with or engage with. So I think it's not just being like that; it's being like that consistently. I think that does a lot. I think it builds trust within the folks that you're trying to do business with, both on the ascension level and around you in that community that you're trying to establish. I think that's a really big part of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And there's one part that I think people don't talk a lot about, but I think it you can only be generous when you're authentic, right?
Ah,
That it's really funny because we're all part of a group called Stake, and the guy who runs it, his name is Raul. He is one of the most kind of like out there guys that I know in terms of just his mannerisms and what he does. But everything that he does, I can genuinely say he does it because that's what he's feeling, that's what he's thinking at the moment, right? When he reaches out and he says, "Hey, Jay, I want you to connect with Jeff because he's a great guy and I really like what he's doing." You know that he actually cares about Jeff and you because he wants that connection to happen. And it's really funny too because he told me, and I think we have different layers of kind of misconceptions about people, but one of them is he always thought that Americans were kind of the, oh, we'll go get lunch later, and then they never show up kind of people, right? I think that happens so often in different parts of the world. I mean, listen, going to LA, I get it all the time. I run into someone that I knew, a couple years ago, and they're like, "Oh, we should go get a coffee or something." And I'm like, "Yeah, yeah, I'll hit you up." And then I never hear from them ever again. That kind of stuff tanks your credibility. It removes you from being able to do anything generous because no one follows through.
yep. I had a few of those this year. I went to a few film festivals, met up with some folks, both new and folks that I knew of that I finally like met in person for the first time. And I was invited to, hey, let's do lunch. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's great. And you send the email, hey, let's follow up. Doesn't happen. They don't refile. And I get it. Life happens. Again, that's where you take the expectations when you put them down. You don't think about it. You don't think about it. You keep it positive. You don't think about it. You say, hey, maybe down the road we'll run into each other again and maybe we'll do lunch then. To me, I think I like letting go of shit as soon as I can. And so it's a form of rejection, right? No doubt about it. Who wants to stay in an energy of rejection? I don't. So I kind of put that stuff down and keep it moving. Like I don't anticipate, oh, they don't like me, or no, to me it's they're busy, I'm busy, and it's all good. And we keep it moving forward, right? Um the I think the universe has a lot to say about that, right? Like you make a connection, and like today's connection, I got to go to lunch. They brought someone along, so now I met someone else. So that was awesome. To the same point, I met some filmmakers a couple months ago. We were supposed to lunch, never met again. So I think you just take them and you just keep going and stay in your flow. And as like you said, authenticity is the key. So if you're still staying authentic to yourself and not really giving those types of experiences second or better third thought, you're good. You're good. Some things just aren't meant to be. You have to accept that too.
We're also living in a world that is going so fast, and if you are very sociable, it's very easy to do those little promises.
Yes.
So, hey, I call
Exactly.
you, hey, I send you this thing. And if you don't have a system to handle those, you're pretty much doomed. So I don't know how you guys are doing, but I personally have a system of notes. And whenever I promise anyone to send them a book or an article or to call them or anything, the first thing I do when I'm finished talking with this person is to write it down. To be able to keep this consistency with people.
I have a I have four different colored notepads. I have red, blue, green, and yellow, and each one has a system. And that's where, so if I'm working on streaming, I'm using one. If I'm working with money and finances, I'm working on one. If I'm working on networking or film festival connections, I'm working. So everyone creates their own system, but yeah, you have to have some form of order, some form of a system. And again, authenticity and consistency are very, very, very powerful in this. I think a lot of people don't realize they're people pleasers, right? And they kind of get lost in that space and trying to make everybody happy, and that's okay, I guess, but you're not going to make everybody happy. It's impossible. There's just too many dynamics, too many variables. And I think if you first of all, being authentic, it's a learning. You have to learn. Not everybody, a lot of people think or believe that they're authentic and they're not. It's just, I don't want to go too deep into that. But that's something that's I have to put out there, right? Because a lot of people are like, oh, I'm my authentic self. Meanwhile, they're talking and bullshitting and lying and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, they're not authentic. And oftentimes, I feel oftentimes those folks they usually are revealed right away, right? They'll say, "Hey, we're gonna go do a thing," and then they don't show up, or they don't follow through, and then that's easy for you to say, "Okay, I just know this person's just not for us or not for me." Um, but I think a lot of us, and this is why I harp on expectations so much. I think a lot of us always are looking outside, and I think a lot of us need to start looking inside. I think a lot of us don't realize our full capabilities. I think a lot of us don't realize our full dimension, right? Like we know we can do these things or comfort zone things. I think a lot of us need to start playing in the fringe areas and learning more about ourselves. And I think that helps everybody become a little bit more authentic to and it also opens you up, it expands you a little more, knowing that I'm not just this now. I can do all these other things. Again, I'm an older person, so I'm learning this a little later in the game. You guys are younger than I, and I'm hoping that younger folks can see this and kind of, take away some of that because I met someone today who was 24 years old. I have a 24-year-old son. I'm like, they have a whole future ahead. You know, I got more days behind me than I do in front of me. So, you know, I kind of want to just put it out there that when they say anything is possible, it really is. But you have to like do the work and do the grind and do and create and sacrifices and selflessness, and there's a lot that goes to it, not just walking the walk.
Yeah, it's tough because it's something that you need to do to be authentic is be vulnerable, right? I think a lot of people put up a lot of walls, put up a lot of things between you and someone else, and it always shows. It
Mhm.
always shows, especially, being a business owner myself. Well, all three of us are business owners here. We all kind of know that it's tough. It's tough. There are days you wake up and you're like, do I want to do this anymore? Is it really worth all of this hassle? It's funny because my barber is one of my favorite people on earth.
I don't have
And
one of those.
yeah. Well, listen, he'll handle your mustache, but it's funny because we always start the same way, right? I'll sit down in the chair and he'll say, "Oh, how are things going?" I'm like, "Awful. Business is terrible. Things are going, I'll just start ranting, and then he'll start ranting about, all of his horrible customers. But then at the end, we always land on the same thing. Man, I wouldn't have it any other way. I wouldn't be doing anything other than this. And when you see people who have that level of dedication, it shows. And you're willing to invest more time, more effort, more money into people like that.
Mhm.
And I think so many people get lost in the glitz and glam of, oh, I'm a CEO, I'm an executive of my startup, and they lose the fact that, I don't want to invest in your business. I mean, the business could be really good, but I want to be able to invest in you.
Yeah, most founders don't realize that. Most founders don't, and that's why again, I think accelerators, good accelerators kind of go over this thing where they absolutely invest in the person that's running the company. I think that's their first analysis before they look at the business and the numbers and do their due diligence on the company. I think the first thing that um, funder is looking at and really wants to know is this the right founder? Is this the
Mhm.
founder that really knows this space? Are they connected to other folks in this space? Are they living in that space? Do they have experience in that space? I think a lot of founders don't understand that aspect of it. I think they build something that's so unique and so awesome that they think it's just, oh, you need to invest in this company because it's amazing. But if you're green, if you're not in the space, if you didn't come up in the space, those are unfortunately red flags for a funder, right? And so, like the first thing we started talking about with me was I've been in the space since 2008. I've been in marketing even longer, and those are like my two hats. I'm not trying to be the guy on the mic or the guy on the stage, the guy in front of the camera. Well, there's better looking, better trained people to do that. Although here I am in front of a camera and whatever. But the idea that there's actors and there's people, you stay in your lane. And then if you're going after something, then you need to put in, like if you want to grow flowers, you got to work in the garden.
Mhm.
You can't just go buy them every Tuesday at the flower shop, right? It's cheaper, it's easier, it's more fulfilling. If you get in your hands and knees, you get in the dirt, you plant the seed, you water them, you tend to them, and before you know it, middle of summer, you have this beautiful, beautiful whatever flowers you planted. um, that's similar to a startup. You know what I mean? You got to know your space. You got to know other people, your lateral people. Who else is doing this? Who are my competitors? Who are those partners that are in this space that we're solving problems for? I think if you're not making those connections, you're not on the right track. You have to also, as much as you want to meet that next funder that's going to give you a $50,000 check or $500,000 check, whatever the case is, you got to know who's in your space. You got to know who are the other players. You got to know what moves they're making. I'm I watch CNBC almost all day, mostly to hear where the money's going, who's doing what, what's Netflix up to. Are they fighting in Capitol Hill to try to pass a law? Or there's a patent. Did you know that streaming companies also deal in patents? Right? So there's all these opportunities that you really have to have, open. You have to be open to and do. That's also work to know what's going on in your landscape, to know who are the other players, to know who's interested in the space. Um, Crunchbase, for example, crunchbase.com is a great database to plug in folks when you're doing research to find out when do they invest, Are they on record? When was the last time? What type of companies there are that they've invested in? So it really is not just chasing the funder, but really um, becoming a conduit in that space where people know who you are, they're starting to build trust within you and your organization. And once you establish that within the community, because we're all 6 degrees separated, those that can really help push your startup forward, they're gonna find you. You're gonna find them.
Absolutely. You know, it's a really weird thing to think about how influential connections are, and in a really technical way, how easy they are to make, but how hard they are to maintain. So, with that in mind, is there something that you do to kind of manage your relationships? Is there some kind of way that you individually, because you're handling producers, investors, actors, people that are building your tech platform? I mean, there's a whole lot of different moving parts there. How do you manage?
With grace. With grace and patience and a lot of water, drinking a lot of water. Um, Again, I've created a little bit of a monster in this company. I'm not gonna lie, right? So it's not like we're producing or providing just one service. We're providing multiple pillars of services. So it can become a challenge sometimes. I mean, 2 years ago, we were completely out. The whole thing crashed, and our development team was not being helpful, and it was frustrating, and it was a terrible time for us, right? I could have easily been like, you know what? I'm done. I am done. And I'm walking away and I can't do this anymore because it's so frustrating and it's completely collapsed. And so team is very important, right? So our development space is completely run by our team, Nate, Sean, Melanie. Um, right now I have a team in Texas that's kind of helping us with the development team. And so it really is finding partners, not for funding, but for the work, right? And that's why I think talking to your friends is important because you talk to your friend, you find out, hey, I love spreadsheets. Great. Come help me with these spreadsheets. You know what I mean? And so I think that's part of it. I think community, friends, family, I think they're a big part of it, right? I've had, not recently, but when we had the crash in 22, I was done, man. I was tuned out. I was like, I don't know what else I can do. We have hardly any funding. This thing's going to take months to come back up. We don't even know what it's going to come back up as because it's not like I'm doing the coding myself. So there was all time, it was friends and family going, dude, what you built is awesome. Stay in it. Like, it's only a matter of time, etc. Then, of course, we had the great actors and writers strike, which was a nightmare because no one was picking up the phone, no one was talking, and so it's really about community. It's really about priority, right? What really needs to everything, let me back up. Everything we do starts with purpose, right? So everything we do is purpose driven, okay? And obviously, if you stay purpose driven, there's certain things that will take priority, organically take priority over another, right? And so I think that's our first approach. It's like, what's priority? What is the purpose of this thing? And do we need to do it absolutely today or this week, that sort of thing? And I think everything else falls in line of that, right? So for example, we are starting to partner with film festivals. This is our go-to market strategy. It's so important because in that festival, any festival, that's 100% my target audience sitting in those seats. So I want to be in as many festivals in the next 12 months that I can be and tell this story, tell the IFT story, tell them why they want to be on IFT, why they should bring their films and shows, why they should subscribe. Okay. I had a film festival, a traditional film festival scheduled for June 16th through the whole week. That's a Monday. So following Tribeca Film Festival, that's June 4th through June 15th, I strategically placed our festival from the 16th through, what is that? Through the 22nd. Fortunately, the first film festival director that I pitched to become a partner was a friend. And she said, we're friends, right? I'm like, yeah. She goes, your festival is a conflict of interest. And I said, why? She goes, well, I know you and I know you're not going to do this, but any other festival director may think that you're scooping their festival for yours. And I said, that's a problem. And so we've pivoted. Rather than doing a traditional festival, we're going to do a week of in-person tech week style events. Okay, so we're going to have a walk. We're going to have karaoke night. We're going to have a ton of fireside chats, a couple of open bar events. I even have one event that's not even for industry, it's just for angel investors.
Mm.
That I have my network of friends now who believe in us, who aren't ready to deploy with us yet, but are interested. They're going to help us by filling a room of other angel investors that love Latino founders. And so that's how we leverage our relationships, right? So we're talking about independent filmmakers and theater producers. Would you expect a hackathon during this week? Probably not. But yesterday, I spoke to my developer in Chicago, and I said, this would be a great way to recruit tech bodies that are really interested in streaming and building that next ultimate streaming app. And so why not orchestrate some form of a hackathon where we can get people, put up the parameters, we're looking for this, that, we're going to solve this problem in streaming, and see who comes out. And partnering with organizations so we don't just have a room full of guys, right? So we're going to introduce maybe some partners that have a lot of female coders or coders that are not just guys, because this is a heavy, heavy male dominated business when it comes to coding in the front end, the back end lead. I'm going to tell you a great story. In January, February last year, I was having a recurring dream. I'm in an office and I'm standing all cute by the office. I don't lean on things. So I was like, that's not even me. I don't know. But my outfit was fire. I know that. And I'm in the middle of this office, and someone walks from outside my office to the door, makes the turn, and comes right at me. And every time it's the same exact movement, but every time it's a different person, but it's only women. It's only women. And they're coming to me with an iPad to show me the solution. So it's a developer. So I'm having the dream at night. I'm having the dream in the daytime. I'm going, okay, I get it. My lead developer is going to be a female. That's a needle in a haystack. So what do? I created a cold email. I put it on LinkedIn, and I put lead developer in the search. And any woman that I found, I sent them, I said, I'm building this thing. It's in streaming. I have no money. But if you're interested in exploring it, let's talk. That was in February, March 2024. I forgot about it. I stopped having the dream. After I did that exercise, I just stopped having the dream. In June, I get an email from a person out in Chicago. Her name is DePauli. And she goes, hey, I want to explore what you're doing. That was in June last year. In August, we were practically crying on the Zoom because she was like, Jay, I've always dreamt of being a lead developer. And I'm like, I was having these recurring dreams in the winter. Like, you know what I mean? So it's some things you just can't control. If you stay open and you do, like me sending out those emails, I didn't know where it was going to lead. But I put out maybe 20 in February and March, and I didn't hear back until June, and I only got one response. But now that person's going to help me run a hackathon in the middle of June. It's going to be awesome, and who knows what type of talent we find in this event, right? So that's why expectations got to go out the window, man. They really got to go out the window, especially when you're building. Especially when you're building something and you're trying to change the way things are. When you're trying to change the status quo, it's absolutely vital that you take your expectations and you chuck them far away, bury them in the beach somewhere. Like, you just can't have them because you get stuck, right? You don't want to be a train on the rails. You want to be able to move wherever you want. You want to be like the queen in the chessboard. You want to be able to move anywhere at any time. And I think a lot of the time people get stuck and they get kind of tunnel vision. Just try things, communicate. You just never know what's going to come back. If it's done in good and with good purpose, if it's done with good intention, oftentimes you're going to get the response you want and need when you're ready.
Mm, that's incredible. You know, in that spirit, Jeff and I started this podcast because we got together and we realized people are so cool and they have such a great capability to do a million different things and be a million different things. And we wanted other people to feel inspired by that, especially people who are maybe starting a new career or, uh, in transition or just trying to figure out what's that one thing from their own career that they're trying to fix or they're trying to maneuver that they can pull wisdom from someone else from. So with that being said, um, for our listeners out there, what's one skill that you can, give them so that they can get from 0 to 1, maybe not just in the entertainment industry, but just as a business builder yourself?
I mean, one of the things I talked about at the beginning was research, right?
Mm,
Research. I think when you're knocking on doors without doing research, you're a salesperson. You're not a founder. I think that's the difference. I think getting to know the targets that you want to, I think that helps you. I think when you research five different people in the space or even like a job application, right? There's tons of websites where you can see where ex-employees work there. You can see what they have to say about that. Like research, going Morpheus mode and some of the things you're passionate about will really open up a lot of doors. It'll open up a lot of options and opportunities in your mind. I think the more you know about the things you're interested in, the more you know about the realms that you want to explore before you jump in, just to kind of know, okay, I kind of see. And again, this is why you do the research. You think, oh, well, you're going to have expectations, right? Sure. That's why I make sure to say you do your research, but then kill the expectation because now you're empowered with that knowledge of what could happen, but you're not trying to control the outcome of what could happen. That's a big difference, right? You're
wow, yeah.
prepared, right? So let's say, for example, at this restaurant I went to today, I went in online yesterday and I looked at the menu. Research, right? I'm a finicky person. I'm gonna make sure that there's something on there that I can actually eat, that I want to eat, right? And so I went and I picked three dishes, right? I didn't know which one I was gonna pick today. I didn't like, I'm gonna go eat this, right? But something as simple as that. It's just that little bit of preparation, right? That's something you could do on your phone on the way to the restaurant, right? But
Hmm.
now that little bit in that reading, maybe you read something on the menu that when your counterpart is there, right? And they go, man, I wonder what's in this dish. And you go, oh, well, I happen to read that. And you know, because you just read it. And now you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So in research, a lot of people think, oh, because you want to control the outcome, you want to know. No, you're empowering yourself with the research.
Mm,
But then you purposefully remove the expectation and just experience whatever it is that you're going to go do. I think that keeps you open and empowered and ready because you know more or less what's going on and what could happen and what's available. And I think that not only makes you more empowered, but it makes it more fun, more enjoyable, right? Where
hmm.
you're like, okay, I came prepared, preparation. I came prepared to come and sit here and enjoy a meal and talk shop with this person and introduce this new person and really like not always, always, always under promise, over deliver, right? Those are very, very important pieces too. Like, don't tell them you're gonna paint everything green. Like, just say we're gonna paint, and then when they show up and see everything green, yes, you know what I'm saying. So,
Hmm.
under promise, over deliver is also something a key takeaway that I like that to tell people, because that can be applied in different ways, right? It can be applied to the relationship with your spouse, with your children. It could be applied to coworkers and friends. Um, and then also, happiness is an inside job. I think
Mm,
one of the things I have two adult children, and one of the things I did for a very long time was just ask this very simple question: are you happy? I think when people ask, "Are you happy?" it gets you thinking about what is happiness? What is that? What is that? Especially with children. I think happiness is an inside job, and when we're conscious of it, I think it makes life a little bit better, right? And so I think in a startup, I think that's a very important question to ask, because a lot of startups may not be the passion project for that person. A lot of startups maybe just be a solution, and they happen to find this niche of the solution, but it may not be what they're most passionate about. And so I find that in a lot of founders, aside from their frustrations and raising and all that, I find a lot of founders are just unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm saying, how can you be on this journey that you chose and not be happy? I love what I do every day. I love it. I'm super happy. I'm not in the best position right now. I have a lot of challenges ahead of me, but I'm happy. I control that. Nobody else controls that. I control that. I can have a bad experience on the train, which I did coming here, which is one of the reasons I was late. But like, I could have been upset. I could have left the train station and walked home upset, arrived here and stayed upset. No, be happy.
Mm-hmm.
I control that. And so I think that's a key question that we don't ask enough of ourselves or the people that we care about around us. I think it raises and makes an awareness to that person. Like, am I happy? I don't know. What does that mean? And I think that starts a process, a positive process of trying to find out what that is. Because when you're happy, everything changes, man. Everything
Mm-hmm.
around you changes, all green lights, that kind of thing. It happens. You know what I mean? So I think that's another thing that I'd like to kind of like people to take away from that is, are you happy? That's an important question.
Wow, this went really deep. And it wasn't even the question that I'm about to ask you, Jay. Ta-da! Special question. This is a question that we ask all our guests. It's a very special moment right now. You have 2 minutes. I will hand to you a magic microphone. And whatever you say during those 2 minutes in the magic microphone will be heard by absolutely everyone on Earth. The people who are living today, but also all the ones that are coming in the future generation, they will hear your message. And you now have 2 minutes. Here's the mic.
Thank you. So I have a very straightforward 4 sentence, very short life motto. Be happy, let go, have fun, stay focused. That's it. I think those 4 elements, those 4 small pillars are very important. I think in that order, be happy, right? It's hard. Sometimes that's hard for people to be happy. It's just life is that difficult. I get it. But it starts to be happy and let go. Let go of those things that you can't control. Let go of those things. If you're worried about something that's going to happen 3 weeks from now, that's not a good place to be. You can't control that 3 weeks from now. You just can't. So be happy, let go, the past and the future. Have fun. That's important. Having fun is a lot better than not having fun. That's what I'm thinking. And have fun and stay focused. Because as much fun as you have, you still gotta grind, you still gotta work, you still gotta accomplish something, you still gotta pay the bills, etc. So it's like it's important. So I think those to me, I have them painted on my wall in my room. Be happy, let go, have fun, stay focused.
Wow. Jay, thank you so much for this discussion. It was so interesting and unexpectedly deep. If you are listening to us right now and you liked this discussion, make sure to like and comment on the platform that you're listening on. This will help us a lot to make the show more known. And remember to tell all your friends that you discover this amazing show, because that's the most effective way to spread the message. Thank you very much, guys.
Thanks, Jay. Take care, everyone. Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.